Welcome, Shyamala.
Hi, Palak. Thank you.
Welcome. So, Shyamala, we've heard a lot about you, and we know that you're a mother of two teenagers who you breastfed past their fourth birthdays, right?
Yes.
And you're also a lactation counselor who specializes working with families from pregnancy right through the weaning age. So, wanted to know a little bit more about, what is your perspective? We've been talking a lot about breastfeeding this week, but the fact that you almost fed your kids through their toddler life, right? What's your
Yes.
perspective on breastfeeding beyond 1 year? Because generally, everybody says you should at least feed for a year and then you should wean. So, I wanted to start head on.
Fantastic. Actually, honestly, we as humans drink breast milk, which is meant for cows, cow's milk, which is meant for calves, throughout our lives. But when it comes to human breast milk, which is for humans, we are particular about not giving it beyond a year, and I don't understand why. Humans, like, we should be breastfeeding as long as the mother and child are comfortable. I weaned only because my supply went down. Otherwise it would have continued much longer. And it is see, breast milk, when you look at it, when you have cow's milk, it is for hunger. When you have breast milk, it is beyond nutrition, right? You have breast milk for, like, babies have breast milk because they are hungry, probably for the first 6 months, and the next 6 months, of course, it is with solids. But then beyond that, maybe it is not necessary for hunger because they are having solids. But breast milk gives much more than nutrition. It gives comfort, it gives that secure feeling, it gives the attachment. So is there any reason to stop? Unless and until the parents feel it should be stopped, I don't think there's any reason to stop. The parent and the child should happily agree to stop. And WHO now says, it's 2 years and beyond, and even the American Academy of Pediatricians have changed their stance from 1 year to 2 years and beyond. So obviously there is some benefit there to feeding beyond 1 year. That is my feeling. You should, like, when you think of giving cow's milk, it is breast milk of another animal, and you should, as a human being, you should be giving what is natural to your baby. That's my take on it.
Thank you for that perspective. It's so true, because we often, you put it very correctly, right? We are okay with drinking the calf's milk, which is actually the cow produces for the calf. But when it comes to human milk, we are grossed out with that.
Exactly. So it all comes from, I think, sexualization of the breast. It comes from also brainwashing by formula companies, which has made you feel that, and the industrialization and the modernization, which makes you feel that breast milk is not for babies beyond a certain age, which is sad, actually.
Absolutely. And actually, because we're speaking about this topic, I wanted to actually zoom out. If we look beyond India, right, if we look at like the German, European countries, they're very okay feeding their kids till like the age of 3.5, 4, right?
Yes.
Till getting breast milk. So it's not really like it's a norm across the world. We need to change that perception. Somehow,
Yes.
we're somehow more influenced by what other countries are doing, and especially on this, they are feeding their kids till they're toddlers. So, wanted to ask you, Shyamala, so what is food security and how does breastfeeding ensure food security?
Okay, I'll give you two definitions, right? One is the very plain, like, if you look at it, it is like, in simple terms, food security is basically having reliable access to sufficient quantity and quality of affordable, acceptable, and nutritious food, which is readily available from local sources and on a continuous basis, right? This is the simple definition. And interestingly, if you look at it, if you breastfeeding, right, does it fit in everywhere? It does. It is readily available. the quantity and quality are good. It is affordable. It is nutritious source. So it is complete food for infants for the first 6 months. And going by this simple definition, even if you look at it without any of the other factors that WHO defines and all the big organization defines, just going by the simple definition, your breast milk fits into every single point mentioned there, right? And if you look at the textbook definition, sorry, you wanted to say something? Yeah. And if you look at the textbook definition of it, right, it says food security actually exists when all people at all times have physical, social, economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food, which meets their dietary needs and food preferences for an active and healthy life. And it has 4 components, right? If you look at it, the first one is availability of food. And if a mother is breastfeeding, there is nothing more available than that. The mother can just lift the baby and latch the baby on at any point of time, and it is available, right? And the second one is access to food. Is it accessible? 100% at any point in time. If the mother is there, food is accessible to the baby. And then comes utilization of food. And when they say utilization of food, what they mean here is the body's ability to make the most of the nutrients. And I think breast milk fits in so perfectly there, because I'm sure you've heard, like a lot of people say, every single part of breast milk is absorbed into the body. There is very less or no waste, right? And it also means like it's not affected by factors such as poor storage, spoilage, cooking practices, and food safety. And I'm laughing here when I say this, because we have myths on breastfeeding where they say, breast milk that is in your breast for long is spoiled, which it isn't, right? So there's no question of spoilage, there's no question of poor storage, there's no question of cooking practices and food safety. So all this combined, and the last one is stability. Like, are you able to provide a constant source of food? And if you look at it, breast milk, yes, it's stable, it's constant. Like if you get it now, you'll get it in the next 2 hours, next 1 hour, whenever the baby needs. So looking at food, if you're looking at it in the point of food security, there is nothing better than breast milk that will fit into all the categories, all the conditions that define food security.
Thank you for so beautifully actually addressing the psychological, the physiological aspects of how, it plays on a child and probably an adult's mind. So wanted to ask you, how does breast milk help in times of crisis? And what kinds of situations can it help in?
It's a very interesting question, and I volunteer with different organizations, right? And I volunteer with a particular organization based in India where we help out in times of crisis. And you'd be really, really surprised. Any crisis happens, right? The first donation that people look for is formula. And it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart because, a child should be able to get their food anytime. And we know the most vulnerable are old age people and a baby because of several reasons. They have less immunity and they're dependent on others for everything and all that. But it is the simplest problem to solve if you're breastfeeding. At least with old age people, that is not true. With babies, if you're breastfeeding, that is the simplest problem to solve. And if you look at it, formula feeding in an emergency is a very, very difficult thing to do. Say in case of rains, right? And floods, which we have consistently every few years, there's floods, there's people displaced, you move people from one place to the other. You move people out of their homes into a shelter where you don't get consistent clean water, you don't have the facility to mix formula at the right temperature. All those things happen. And if a mother is breastfeeding, that would have been the easiest thing to do without worrying about anything. And it would be easy for the support people as well to just provide the mother good clean food and not worry about the baby dependent on the mother, because the mother can take care of the baby, right? And things like that. Say earlier this year, even during COVID, earlier this year 2022, there was huge problem in US getting formula. And what happens in case like where you don't get formula, like a baby is fully dependent on breast milk, that's fine, fair enough. You feed wherever, like whatever condition, whatever situation. And if you're dependent on formula and if you're not getting the formula, right, that becomes a problem, because what are you going to give? Are you going to give cow's milk? Are you going to start on solids? You get into a dilemma, and that becomes a problem because none of that is suitable for the baby, right? At least formula, now what happens, they've adjusted the proteins, they've adjusted whatever is available in cow's milk to a level in which baby can tolerate. If you're going to give cow's milk directly, and the milk, like breast milk, like what we make, whether it is cow's milk or human milk, is made for our own babies. So the proteins, the hormones, the sugars, the fats, everything is adjusted to what our baby needs. So what the cow produces is what the calf needs, not what a human baby needs. So if you're going to give that to an infant, that is obviously going to affect the baby. So it becomes a problem if you're dependent on something which is external. For a baby that tiny, the easiest thing to do would be to breastfeed. Okay, there are times when there could be a wet nurse, where there are times when you can get breast milk, but in crisis times, you're not going to think of any of that. You're displaced from where you are. You're not in a position to give what you want to give. And you're forced to give something which is not right for the baby, which makes the baby sick. You're already not in a position to take care of yourself, and your baby gets sick, which means you have to rush to a doctor, which might not be possible. And you can see the cascade, what happens there, right? So this not only puts physical stress on the parents, like you need to get formula, the mental stress that they go through, and the financial stress that they go through. In any crisis, what happens is people like displaced from home are looking at financial stability as well. So that adds to more stress. Everything put together, I think the best thing would be to breastfeed. Like, you don't know when a crisis is going to happen. You never knew that there would be COVID. You never knew there'd be a war on Ukraine. You never knew there would be floods. But if you were breastfeeding all along, you wouldn't have a problem. And I think that is where it is important. Like, breastfeeding helps. Like, you breastfeed your child, and that helps you through any kind of crisis.
So true, so true. We have someone who's saying, I have a sis recently and she became a mother, but her baby doesn't want to be breastfed.
How true is that? That's a very I tell you why that's interesting, because a lot of times we don't know there is someone called a lactation counselor, right? We have lost our instincts to breastfeed from generations now, for the past few generations. So it is not that the baby doesn't want to breastfeed. There is some kind of a problem there, and that problem the breastfeeding problem needs to be solved by giving a breastfeeding solution. So I would suggest go and meet a lactation counselor. Most likely scenario, the baby wasn't allowed to latch on right away after birth. The way the baby was put and forced onto the breast by a nurse or a midwife. The baby may be having a tongue tie. There's so much more to it. It is not a simple question to be answered, but meeting a lactation counselor definitely helps.
Thank you for sharing that, Shyamala, because I also experience the same thing. There's a lack of people don't think the entire motherhood experience is anything beyond a gynecologist, unfortunately. there, right?
I know.
And that's why we started the First Parents. Me and my sister, my name is Honey, and me and my sister Khushbu, we started the First Parents from that perspective during lockdown, because the whole idea was that, yes, there is somebody called a gynecologist, but there are many other, experts who a mother really needs, especially
Yes.
to, go through this journey holistically, and not to be addressed by people's experiences, but by experts and scientific evidence. So thank you for pointing at that. And I mean, to our listener, I want to say that yes, she's right. It might be a tongue tie issue. It might be, a lactation issue. It might be, latching incorrectly. It might be that you're latching the baby the time the baby doesn't want to have milk, is just looking for comfort. So you need to see an expert. So moving on to the next question, can you share with us, because we just have last few minutes left, what's your, last tip as, a mother who's fed toddlers? Because I want to bring up this topic even more. But there are a lot of mothers who can't breastfeed, right? Who genuinely can't. They don't get any breastfeed.
Actually, I need to correct that, Honey. The fact that a lot of times it's okay. If a mother doesn't want to breastfeed for her own
No,
reasons,
I'm not saying that. I'm saying sometimes, scientifically, they just don't produce it.
Scientifically, the percentage is very, very less.
Exactly. Does a mother become less of a mother if she can't breastfeed?
No. Even before you finish your question, the answer is no. See, a mother doesn't become a less of a mother because she can't breastfeed. But my issue here is that a lot of times we decide that we can't breastfeed based on our own perceptions or the perceptions pushed onto us by people around us. A lot of time baby cries, there'll be an old lady in the house going, like it could be a grandmother or it could be somebody else walking in going, oh, your baby's crying, you don't have enough milk, which is not true. So it is not that a mother can't breastfeed, it is just the perception. Like if you look at it, the baby will be growing so well. The baby would have shot up in height and weight and everything, and they'll still go, oh, your baby is 4 months now, you're not producing enough milk for your baby. So the first switch to formula happens, and once that happens, it's downhill. So there's no turning back ever on that. So my take on that is, please find breastfeeding solutions to breastfeeding problems. Talk to an expert. Talk to people who support you in that journey, who will tell you that you're making enough. Who will tell you, like, if you have a problem, meet a lactation counselor. Just don't listen to anybody and everybody. And I think that is really, really important.
Thank you for stating that, because, this was one of the questions that we've addressed throughout the breastfeeding week, where we wanted to ask every expert coming from any field, because this guilt of a mother, I think, plays onto her mind for most of her life, maybe not for the child. So
true.
Thank you so much.
We have mom's guilt for everything, Honey. We, the child laughs, we feel guilty. The child doesn't laugh, we feel guilty. I think that is there everywhere,